Hey everyone, this is Kat and welcome back to the bookish side of me. Alright, so welcome to another episode of Quarterly Wrap Up. We're done with the first 6 months of 2021 and I just couldn't believe it. So anyway, for this video, I'm going to share with you all the books that I have read for the second quarter of the year. I've done the first quarter, and if you haven't seen that one yet, I'm going to put the link on the description box and on the iCard on your screen right now. So in that video, I talked about how this quarterly wrap up will work and also like my tier ranking and all that stuff. So anyway, without further ado, let's do this quarterly wrap up. So for the last 3 months from April, May, and June, I've read a total of 22 books. And again, it's less than the usual amount of books that I have read in a quarter. But it's because I've experienced the worst reading slump for like 2 months. And it was the worst. So anyway, out of the 22 books that I have read, majority of those books are contemporary, followed by fantasy books and then thriller or mystery genre. And then I've also read a couple of romance, historical fiction, poetry, and horror books, which makes me happy because I've said this in the first episode of the first quarter. I want to catch up on my thriller, mystery, horror books because I have a lot on my TBR. So this statistics makes me happy. So anyway, let's move on to the next part. So with regards to the age range or age level, I've read 11 adult books and then 7 young adult and then 4 middle grade books. And also this just makes me happy. This is just like a normal for me. Like my pacing is just the right amount. With the years published of these books, 3 out of 22 are new releases for this year, and then the rest are backlist titles. And lastly, but definitely not the least, I love finding out if I have dented my physical TBR. So with this statistics, it shows here the format of books that I've read for the last quarter, and majority of those I've read in hardback and then paperback, which basically means that I own these books physically, and then I read a couple of ebooks and then audiobook, and then I received an e-arc. Again, as I've said, I just really love looking at the statistics. It doesn't really mean anything. It's just for like personal, I don't know, satisfaction, if you know what I mean. Let's move on right now to all the books that I have read for the last quarter. So just like the previous episode of the series, I'm going to show you like the graphics of all the titles in a specific tier ranking that I've done. So if you don't know yet, I don't rate books anymore, or at least for this year, and I have made my own tier ranking. So the first one is books that are disappointing or books that are not for me. The second one is books that I feel average about, mediocre. And then the third one is liked it a lot. These are the books that are almost my favorites. And then of course the last tier, which is like I consider as God tier, are my favorite reads for the year or for the quarter or whatever. So these are my 4 tier rankings, and I'm just going to show you the titles for each rank on your screen right now. So first off, let's start with the disappointing reads or books that I feel like it's not for me, it's not catered for my reading taste or preference. And these are the books that I am talking about for this quarter. So these are just 2 books, which kind of makes me sad because these 2 are some of my most anticipated reads. But when I read it this year, I feel like I was disappointed. And again, for this tier, it doesn't necessarily mean that the books in here are bad or worst. It's just that it disappointed me in some ways, and I feel like it's not really for me. Like, I understand why people like it. I understand why this is their favorite books or why they hype these books up. But it's just that for me, it didn't work as much as I wanted it to. And no one is really more disappointed than me in this case. if you know what I mean. So these are the only 2 books on this tier ranking. And then the next tier is what we call the average feels. So these are the books that I just feel average about, kind of mediocre. Like, I don't have strong feelings or emotions toward these books. Like, these are the books that I enjoyed for the most part. And usually when I feel average about books, it means that it doesn't affect me in some ways. Probably while reading it, but after reading it and upon sitting on it, I just don't think that I like to read it again, or I'd like to talk about the characters or whatsoever. So yeah, average feels. All right, the next tier is what we call as liked it a lot. And again, as I've said, these are books that are almost my favorites, but they didn't make it to the favorites tier. And it is because probably there are some points in here that I just feel like, okay, this is something off to me, or I don't know, something like that. So these are all the books for this quarter that I really liked. Like, I liked reading these books. I enjoyed my time doing so. I remember the characters. I want to talk about this book to certain people. I love to post about them and share it to my friends. So I have here a total of 12 books. It just really makes me happy to think about the last 6 months that majority of the books I read are books that I liked a lot. If you have watched the first episode, you will also know that the most number of books in each rank is the third one, which is this tier. And right now on the second quarter, it's still the same scenario. All right, now we are going to talk about my most favorite reads for this quarter. And I am so excited to share these books with you. So without further ado, let's jump into it. Alright, so the first book that I'm going to share with you, this is a reread, and I thought of sharing it here because I don't think that I've talked about this book before on my channel. The book that I'm talking about is The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. And if you've been following me on Instagram and Twitter, you already know that I love this book with all of my heart. I first read this in 2018 and I loved it. I loved Evelyn Hugo. You cannot convince me otherwise. She's a queen. She's a badass. She's a bitch. I love her so much. So anyway, just in case you don't know what this book is all about, just in case you haven't heard this book yet, so this one in particular is a historical fiction. There is like a fictional Hollywood actors and actresses and celebrities in this book, and Evelyn Hugo is one of them. So Evelyn Hugo is like this Hollywood star that everybody knows and admires, but then she has a very controversial biography because she has 7 husbands in her lifetime. And this book will start with her trying to reach out to this certain journalist named Monique Grant. So she would like to get Monique to write her biography, and from there forward, her story will unfold from the beginning until the very present. So she's going to share her story and how did she end up having 7 husbands. And this book was just chef's kiss. I love how the story went, the structure, the flow of the book, the message of this book. I loved it. I just loved it so much. It still holds up as one of my favorite books of all time, and I just loved it for it. Read this book if you haven't yet. I am telling you to read this fucking book. Okay? So, let's move on. Okay, the next book that I'm going to talk about, I just couldn't get my head around this book. So just a backstory, I love this person so much. So I know of this person because of social media. I follow her on Instagram and Twitter probably 2 to 3 years ago as well. And I have a tattoo in here that you see on my videos and on my photos. And this tattoo came from one of her poems that she posted on Instagram. So when I found out that she released a book in 2020, I immediately grabbed the opportunity to get it in ebook first, and then I read it and I fucking love it. Oh my god, I cannot stress this enough, but I love this book with all of my heart. The book that I'm talking about is All Along You Were Blooming by Morgan Harper Nichols. Okay, I just couldn't stop talking about this book. So when I was reading this book, I was crying, and when I finished it, I also cried, and it was just a perfect timing. This book hugged me. This book comforted me. Like, the warmth that it gave me was on a different level. I just couldn't explain it with you. It was an experience. It's not something that I could like resonate with you on the screen, but it's something that I experienced because of like a situation or my mental or emotional state during the time that I was reading this book. It was like a book that will remind you of your worth and will remind you how you should see yourself, how you should see yourself when you look in the mirror or when you wake up in the morning or in simple things. So yeah, so this book just made me cry, and I don't think that I can explain about this book without sharing a little bit of myself. We're not just gonna do that. So anyway, this is like a collection of poetry, and I just love this physical copy so much. It's kind of expensive, but I don't know, it's worth it. So I love the illustrations inside this book. It was so pretty. Oh my god, it's so pretty. I know Morgan Harper Nichols for years already, so I already know that this book will be aesthetically pleasing. Not just the words, but like the visuals. Oh my god, so fucking good. Alright, next book that I'm going to share with you is my favorite middle grade book of the year, I think, so far. So I don't know yet because I have yet to read a lot of middle grade books on my TBR, but I just found a book that I resonated so much. I found a book that made me bawl in tears, okay? And this book is Sugar Inspired by Gail Villanueva. Oh my freaking god. I read it for In Cosmic Dreams, which is my book club, and I discussed this book with Ina of Ina the Mood Reader, and I loved it. So if you don't know yet, this is a middle grade contemporary. It follows the story of Jolina and Claudine, and Jolina and her family just transferred to this island in the Philippines. It's called Pag-ibig. They are from Metro Manila. So the main character in here has to adjust in the province life, and then she will meet this Claudine girl who is apparently like a bully in their school. And then one day Jolina thought of doing something silly because her grandfather is like albulario, or I don't know what is it called in English. I'm gonna find the right word. I'm gonna put it on the screen. It was like her grandfather knows how to do like magic potions, and then Jolina thought, I'm gonna do something to Claudine to make her a kind person, because obviously she's not. So long story short, Jolina will try to make a magic potion to make Claudine a kind person. So that's like the whole premise of this book, and I just freaking love this. Oh my god, oh my gosh. When I discussed this with Ina during the In Cosmic Dreams live discussion, I realized how good this book was written. Like the flow, the structure, the storyline, the plot twist, that one scene that made me cry so much in tears. Oh my god. I love the characters, how middle grade it really sounds, how light this is compared to the first book of the author. And I just like how the author showed the realities of Filipinos when we are experiencing calamities, typhoons, flooding, and all that stuff. So yeah, that's it for this book. I love it so much. Alright, so next book that I'm going to talk about, this is my favorite thriller for the year. I don't know yet because, as I've said, I have yet to read a lot of thrillers on my TBR, but I am just really so happy that I was not disappointed by this book. It has so much hype, and if I'm going to be honest, I was scared that I'm not gonna love this book because I've been wanting this since last year. Okay, I'm gonna show it to you so you will understand me. So this book is Lock Every Door by Riley Sager. If you love thriller books, you know that this book is all over the place. You know that this book is well loved in the whole community, and oh my god, it definitely met my expectations. I love it so much. I cannot stress this enough. I cannot. This book in particular, if you don't know what this is about, so it follows the story of this woman named Jules, and she was hired to like house sit this certain apartment unit in this prestigious, very exclusive apartment building in New York. So she was hired to like take care of the apartment for the next 3 months, and the pay was good. So she accepted it because she needs money, right? And then while she was staying there for like the next 6 days, she will experience a lot of strange things that she will begin to get curious, and she will begin to investigate what is happening in this building, why people are so strange, why they're so strict, why are there so many rules and all that stuff. I just love the build up. Like right now, I don't know if you can see it, but I'm having goosebumps because I remembered the build up in this book. I remembered how much I liked the feelings that I felt while reading this book. I slept for 2 or 3 in the morning just to finish this book, and it was worth it. It was fucking worth it. So I love this book so much. I love the plot structure, the plot twist, the storyline. I love the setting. I love the New York vibe, and then in the prestigious apartment building and all that whatnot. But then probably the only critic that I have in here is like the main character herself. Although I understand her, I understand where she is coming from, but it's just that sometimes I think that she's dumb. And I think it's very, I know, Americanized kind of thriller. Like the main character has to be a little bit dumb. So yeah, but aside from that, I love everything about this book, especially the last part, especially the conclusion. So yeah, read this book if you haven't yet, but you know, take everything that I say with a grain of salt, because you might not like this book at all, especially if you've read a lot of thrillers already. But yeah, let's move on. All right, last book on this file. I don't think that this book will be out of my top 10 because I think it will stay at least my top 3 or my top 5 by the end of this year, because this book just blew my mind away. Kumbaga, sa Tagalog, tapos na, uwian na, wala na, may nanalo na, may nakauwi na ng corona, tapos na ang laban, let's all go home. That's how I felt. When I read this book, it was like, game's over. Game's over for you bitches. No, of course, I was kidding, but really not. So the book that I'm talking about is The Dragon of Jinsayang by K.S. Villoso. This book, oh goodness gracious. I don't know how to explain to you how much I was mind blown by this book. How much I love Queen Talien. How much I am a simp for Kain Lamang, and how fucking good this book was. So anyway, before I break down right now, so this book was kindly sent to us by Orbit, the publisher and the author K.S. Villoso, because the TRIHOES is part of the book tour of Kathleen Book Tours back in May. So we were invited again to join the tour for the series. We've done one in 2020, which is the Icazar Falcon, the second book in the Chronicles of the Bitch Queen, and this book is already the 3rd installment and the finale and the conclusion of the series. So basically, because this is already like the 3rd installment, I cannot tell you the synopsis of this book, but the whole series itself, the Chronicles of Bitch Queen, follows the story of Talien, who is the queen of this nation called Jinsayang. And Jinsayang is basically inspired by Philippines if we were not colonized by the Spaniards and all that fucking colonizers. So in the first book, Talien is going out of her nation to find her husband that left her 5 years ago. And from then on, a lot of things are going to happen. So this is going to be an adventure field of series. If you want series that are action-packed, a lot of adventures, a lot of happening, a lot of plot twist, and I don't know, family drama and family saga, I think this is a perfect series for you. So I just love the setting and the world building of the whole series. I love kingdoms and thrones. There are lords and kings and queens. There are also certain parts of this book like has, of course, fantasy elements, but majority of it are just focused on political plays and also societal issues that are very, very relevant up to this day in the Philippines. I just really think that there's something about all those stuff that will make you think that this was really inspired by the Philippines, its people, and our history. And I just love it so much. Like, more than the food references, more than the cultural references, it's just like very Filipino. So anyway, if you don't know yet, K.S. Villosa is, by the way, a Filipino author, so that's why it's just makes sense, you know. So anyway, with this book in particular, this is my most favorite book among all the 3 books that I have read. I loved The Wolf of Aranyaro. I think I gave it 5 stars. And then I had some issues with the Icazor Falcon and I gave it like 4 stars in 2020. But this book, if I can give it 10 million stars, I fucking would. Alright, so those are all the books that are my favorite reads for this quarter, and also all the books that I have read so far. And again, as I've said earlier, even though I've read less than the usual, I'm still so happy with everything that I've read. I think the first half of 2021 is not that perfect. It's not that smooth, but I feel like I've been learning a lot about myself, and I've also been learning about the books that I really want to read. So anyway, that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for bearing with me again for the last couple of weeks that I'm not uploading consistently, but I hope that you're enjoying all the content that I've put out so far. And if you reached this part, what is your most favorite read for the second quarter of 2021? Comment it down below. But that's it. I hope that you're happy, you're safe, you're healthy wherever you are, and I hope that if it's available to you and you are able to get it, please get yourself vaccinated and follow protocol. And of course, just remember, the world is yours for the reading. Bye, and see you on the next one. Also, do not forget, stream Permission to Dance by BTS, one of the best songs ever. It's out now. That's it. Bye.